I'm Jasmine Carranza. Thank you for coming to my presentation today based on my research proposal based on the topic of investing in financial literacy education. On my agenda today, I'll be talking about the problem, the research findings that I found, and my recommendations based on my research. So the problem that I found was that a lot of people throughout regular day life would joke about how unprepared they were for their financial futures. A lot of people joke about how they know that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, but they don't know anything about taxes, investments, or loans. And those are things that are more likely to affect the majority of people based on compared to other things that our high schools teach us. So I wanted to see if financial institutions were preparing students for their financial future, and if America was doing better overall or worse overall in financial literacy. And through the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, I found that they conduct a survey every 3 years. And for the past 3 years, from 2009 to 2015, our score in the United States kept dropping to a final score of 57% in 2015. So I came up with some research questions based off of that. And I wanted to know, how does one's knowledge of financial literacy affect their relationship with their personal finances? Are those who have some form of financial literacy education put at an advantage compared to those who don't? And where do people get their financial literacy education from? And what would be the best source to get that education from? So through my research, I came up with some arguments for and against. And first I'll be going over the arguments for investing in financial literacy education. I read 4 different scholarly journals, and all of them concluded that those who had taken financial literacy education classes were better off overall compared to those who hadn't. They scored better in tests regarding financial literacy topics such as investing, um, and in financial literacy education, a journal in a journal called Financial Education and Student Financial Literacy, they found that the biggest positive difference in test scores through the PISA study happened when students were taught by private institutions and specialists. So some arguments against investing in financial literacy education would be through a journal that I found titled From Financial Education to Financial Literacy to Financial Stability. And they conducted a study where they had 2 groups of people, and they informed one group on the topic of credit, and the other group they didn't inform on the topic at all. And they actually found that the group who they had given a class to were overconfident in the topic and ended up doing worse. Another point that was made was that teachers weren't being properly equipped or trained on the topic, and that could lead to misinformation. So another problem that I found in the journals was that they suggested that there wasn't a problem with the classes, but there was more of a problem with the retention. So students were learning when they were taking the classes, but the time that it took for them to actually apply them to real life situations was too long, so they were losing a lot of that information. And in my survey, I found that the majority of people got their financial literacy education through their high school. So I also asked them what they wanted to know, and they wanted to learn more about credit, debit, investing, taxes, and loans. Through my research, I would recommend that we invest more in financial literacy education, because even the journals that I found that had some arguments against it, overall recommended that we do invest because it helps everyone in the long run, not just on an individual level, but on a macro level for our economy. I also recommend that we implement more hands-on activities in curriculums and bring in experts or guest speakers to talk about different subjects so that there is no misinformation. And for individuals like us who have already graduated high school, I recommend that you ask your banks for available resources that they have, that you ask your employer, or that you take a class here at Weber and research online for specific topics that you want to know more about. Thank you for coming to my presentation.